Today I'm going to be talking about the article Trauma-Informed Approaches to Juvenile Justice, a Critical Race Perspective. So some key points. Youth of color experience disproportionate juvenile justice contact and recidivism. Recidivism is the act of a person repeating an undesirable behavior after they have experienced negative consequences of that behavior. Um, Another key point is that there are currently racial injustice in the juvenile justice system, and this article explores trauma-informed approaches from a critical race theory perspective. Okay, so what's the problem? Over 60%, over 62% of youth detained or committed to residential placement in the US in 2010 were of African American and or Hispanic Latino origin. Um, So basically, that is an overrepresentation of youth of color, and that seems to be the common trend throughout this article. So another unsettling statistic is that African American youth were almost 5 times as likely to be incarcerated. Okay, so let's talk about trauma. Um, Studies have demonstrated that 9% of youth in detention facilities report experiencing previous trauma. So basically, more trauma equals more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. The vulnerable population are low-class African American youth. They are more than twice as likely as white youth to be raised in poverty-stricken areas. So this increases their exposure to crime, stress, and then, and most important, the amount of trauma they do discover throughout their life. This article also talks about the complexity of the trauma theory. Traumatic events can create a lasting impact on the individual's ability to function physically or emotionally. Because it is mainly colored youth experience in this, it is most important that trauma-informed care is used among the juvenile justice system. And the picture I just put in there is how an incarcerated youth can affect the family. It affects everyone, not just the youth that is involved. So some trauma continued. The National Center for Trauma-Informed Care approaches are as followed. So realize the prevalence and impact of psychological trauma, recognize the trauma-related symptoms of individuals, respond using trauma-sensitive methods and knowledge at all levels of the system, aim to actively avoid re-traumatization or sanctuary trauma. So on the next slide, it's going to show the 6 main principles that trauma workers should abide by. So here are the principles: safety, collaboration and mutuality, trustworthiness and transparency, voice and choice, peer support, empowerment, cultural, historical, and gender issues. So I have a question that you can respond on the detailed discussion page. What principle do you think is the most important one when working with juvenile youth, and why do you think that way? Okay, so we're going to talk about the critical race theory, which was also in this article. The definition is a framework for studying the relationships among race, power, racism, and oppression to encourage positive social change. So the main point is that racism, this was in the article, racism is a systematically pervasive issue rather than an occasional social occurrence. So basically, it is not a coincidence that colored youth are being locked up. There's overall something wrong with our system, and they need to learn how to handle things differently. So another main component of CRT is intersectionality. So intersectionality is individuals are composed of multiple identities that both intersect with and struggle against one another. So basically what the article was trying to get to is that the efforts to address racism and oppression in the justice system should also focus on intersectionality in each individual's makeup. It's known that everyone is not made the same and everyone's different. So it is important to treat people equally and also dig a little bit deeper to see if there's any different personalities that might be triggered during a struggle or being incarcerated at a young age. Okay, so the conclusion of the research. On the last page of Crosby's article, I really like this quote that he said. He said, "Juvenile justice practitioners should explore knowledge about childhood trauma, along with culturally sensitive and trauma-informed approaches to addressing delinquency." Um, with this conclusion, it may help the system improve the juvenile's behavior rather than inhumanely punishing them. It is important to look deeper. There's always something deeper. So I think it'd be important to incorporate this in the juvenile systems today.